Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I want to talk about gifted children and the divide between some that struggle as adults and some that are doing well. Why is there such a divide in the studies? Why are two individuals, two groups who start out as the same group have such different outcomes? Why do some do what some of the studies say exceptionally well? And then why do some struggle as adults, even though they were both gifted as children? Today, I want to talk about the research about that, and we're going to also discuss where this comes from. But first, I'd like to state there are a good amount of research for both sides. It doesn't mean that because your outcome is different than another person that you are less gifted or more gifted. It's really not about that. We're seeing there's a lot of other stressors and variables involved, which is most things about life. But I'd like to first talk about the group of individuals that were successful or succeeded from a societal perspective, okay? This study in 2014 did follow these individuals, these gifted individuals. There's about 1,600 approximately of these individuals that were among the top 1% of, I believe, reasoning ability regarding mathematics, okay? And so it's a little bit more specific here, okay? And they followed these individuals for about 40 years, actually. And so what did we find? And I think this is very interesting. I think you guys will really enjoy the details of this, okay? What we found is that these participants, okay, accomplished, like a good majority of them, about 4% obtained tenured in a research university. About 2 were executives in Fortune 500 companies. About 2% were attorneys at major firms or organizations. Collectively, about 7,000 articles were published, and then 85 books for this group. And then a lot of them had, I believe it was about almost 700 had patents, okay? And then over 300 million research grants. And so what does this all mean? I think it's important to break this up. We are looking at them at the end of their outcome, the 40 years. And so what can this mean? Does it mean that every single person who is gifted is going to end up this way? No, a lot of these are like in the less than 5%, okay? It's still a large amount in comparison to the average population. But what we are actually seeing is something more interesting than that. Does it mean, and this is a speculation, does it mean that during these 4 decades that there were times where they did not seem that they were going to end up in a positive direction and they ended up being that way? Were they always on a positive track and trajectory? Well, that's part of the variables. What it does seem is it's a good chance, based on not just the study, but also the review in 2021, that if you are somebody that was gifted as a child, you will probably have accomplishments as an adult that you probably don't see yet. And so you are struggling now, but you may not struggle later, because adulthood is very, like, it's much longer than childhood in that perspective, right? Because we're also considering so many other avenues. And so if you are a person that is struggling as an adult, yes, there is a correlation between being gifted, but there's also a correlation between you coming out on top regardless. So it does mean that if you are struggling now, you might not always be struggling. And a lot of times, this is where people get caught up the most, because one of the main factors that gifted children struggle as an adult is perfectionism. And that is what a lot of you guys struggle with. You think because you're struggling now, you're going to struggle for as long as you live because you have that tunnel vision. And so this systematic review, published in 2021, actually examined perfectionism among academically gifted students and how they turned out as adults. Okay, and so this is very interesting. Okay, we do see that these individuals do have, I guess, elevated perfectionism tendencies. And what actually does show up is we do see a lot of expectations, pressure, and more importantly, how that individual interprets failure. And so if you are a person where perhaps you were gifted as a child and now as an adult, you're doing pretty well, but you're interpreting the negative side of it. So let's say, for example, you are a teacher, professor, maybe you have your own business, whatever it is you're doing. A lot of times research will say, okay, that's a pretty successful person, but you might not. You might interpret that as a failure. So this is the aspect that's very interesting. And I think a lot of you guys struggle with this. You might think, okay, I'm not doing well because I'm not in a relationship, or because I had a divorce, there's something wrong with me. This is part of life, but the interesting part is gifted individuals are more likely to be more critical of themselves based on this perfectionism. Okay. If you're interested in more exclusive content from me, I post 5 minimum exclusive videos a month in our group, and we do other things as well. So if you are interested in joining, that is pinned in the comments. So there's another study that was kind of interesting, and I'd like to talk about this. There's a complexity with gifted individuals. Some gifted individuals perform below what was expected of their abilities, and the research actually suggests these reasons. Boredom of school is actually something that can happen. Sometimes you're not challenged, and so you're literally just checking out. So you actually are underachieving because you're not being challenged, because it's not exciting for you. Lack of challenge is one of the more common ones. Now, there is some other aspects as well. ADHD and autism does put this as well. If you're gifted, but you have those neurological diagnostic impressions, your brain is just different. And so you might school is just, it's not set for the type of person you are. And so you're underachieving based on individuals who do not have that diagnostic impression, the neurological conditions, right? And so really the reality of that is you're not really underachieving. It's just you are in a certain category because it's not fit for you, the way your brain is made. Mental health concerns can happen as well. Low motivation is one of the more common ones cited as well. A lot of people do not have motivation in things they are not interested in, particularly because we can see in the research, a lot of gifted individuals are actually highly creative, and school and work and job and opportunities like that, career opportunities, they do not reach the creativity that some gifted individuals have. And so you might just not be motivated because a lot of things are not creatively inclined comparison to the way your brain works. And so you might not be achieving as high as some people might assume, because they're assuming it based off what they think is high achieving, not based on how your brain works. And so this is interesting. I believe that's very true, but it's nice to see it in studies as well. There's a little bit of studies that show this next one, social isolation, but it is conflicted. There's a lot. I still think this area right here needs a lot more studies, because you can see it doesn't show too significant, to be honest, but it's there a little bit. So we're going to talk about it. Social isolation. Some gifted individuals do report. Okay, they do report they feel different than their peers. However, studies do show that social isolation can happen for numerous reasons, especially nowadays, that gifted individuals do not highly stand out among those who are socially isolated. But I think that says more about our society rather than gifted individuals. So I think more studies need to be done for that particular group, because things are changing now. And so that's why that one doesn't really help. It's still there. But the next one is existential concerns. There is studies that gifted individuals actually reflect more deeply and question certain things about their purpose of their life, maybe their potential, maybe their satisfaction levels. And so sometimes this is correlated to a little bit higher emotional intensity, just a little, right? And so sometimes we can see that this intensity can actually impact their progress as an adult, okay? And so identity issues is another one. It's the last one. But a lot of times we can see this. The study was actually during childhood, so we don't really see the path towards adulthood, but we can assume that sometimes it happens. These individuals that were gifted in childhood, sometimes they struggle with that identity. If I'm gifted, how come I don't feel gifted? If I'm gifted, how come I'm not succeeding? If I'm gifted, how come my peers are doing better? And so a lot of times we can see this. So the study 2014, 2021, 2023, it is in the description box. I hope this video is helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.